Steam Next Fest February 2024 is out, and whilst I can't commit to my usual plethora of videos on loads of different genres, I am doing a few, the first of which is a rhythm game list. There are 8 games to choose from. I add them to my wish list, play the demo and see if they survive the cut afterwards. And the first game on this list didn't. It's called ADEN, or ADEN, and it's a 2D side-scrolling beat-em-up masquerading with rhythm and music elements to it, but the tenuous link is really quite tenuous when you get into playing it, and that's why I didn't really like the game very much. In this game you play as this alien that descends from the sky to try and kill other aliens to stop them killing humans, and you do this by charging around on attacks supposedly to the rhythm and beat of what's going on around you, but it really doesn't make much difference. But whenever you do then attack enemies, they then trigger their attacks rhythmically, so they'll send across 10 waves of attack, and one will be at the top of the screen, the next at the bottom, and so you'll kind of dodge through them slightly rhythmically. Then when you knock out your opponent, this is the only part that's actually a rhythm action element, where you then have to move the analog stick to the beat to keep them down and out for the count, a bit like when you're trying to count to 10 in a boxing match to declare the KO. It's too bitty, this game. It's all over the place. It didn't feel very well connected, and it didn't feel satisfying as a 2D side-scrolling beat-em-up either. So I removed it from my wish list, and whilst I quite like the aesthetic and some of the ideas around this, it just didn't gel for me. A more traditional rhythm action game is GUNVOLT Records Chronicle, and this takes you into a game that reminds me very much of Airtone, the VR rhythm game. And the reason for this is because you're quite often using your analog sticks, and both of them, to kind of go out and rotate around the analog stick to the time of what the beats are that are going on. When you're playing with the controller, you use your bumper buttons to trigger the normal kind of 2-lane or 4-lane buttons that are coming down towards you. And then you've also got analog sticks to press up, down, left and right on the 8 compass directions. And then you've got this kind of press, hold and twiddle that's going on. And as you go up the difficulties, they all kind of combine together. So it's as if you're constantly doing thumb gymnastics going around all of the different triggers that are going on. The high energy J-pop soundtrack is great. I'm not too familiar with the GUNVOLT series, although I do own a couple of the games, but they seem to be the big vocal themes or vocal theme arrangements of big Battles or overarching theme songs. So the music was really quite punchy and memorable. The graphics were quite cool too. It took a little while for me to get used to how interconnected all of the different things are. But it was a good challenge, and I really enjoyed it, and it's absolutely staying on my wish list, and it's coming out quite soon actually, so that's another one to add to my pile. The next game on this list is Beat Slayer, and this is one of the reasons why ADEN early on in the list got pushed off, because Beat Slayer does what that game does 100 times better. In this game, it's very much like Curse of the Necrodancer, where you're moving around every single beat you need to move somewhere, and whether that's to attack or to dodge or to move, whatever it is that you're doing, you're always going on the beat. But so are all of the enemy attacks. So they will attack you every 4th beat or a 3rd beat, or they'll charge at you on the 3rd beat or something like that. So you've really got to be quite careful, as when you move into new arenas, more and more enemies are spawning. Sometimes they'll trigger attacks that will not only hurt you, but they'll attack themselves, so you can kind of lure them into their own friendly fire, which was quite cool. And then as you go through the game, you're constantly getting upgrades to your own character, unlocking XP to then do overarching upgrades for your character as well. And I really love the vibe and aesthetic of this. And it's all set in a dystopian Berlin, where everyone's having to listen to the same music to be controlled, and you've got your own headphones on and you're going a bit rogue. I thought this had style, class, really well put together rhythm, gameplay loops and aesthetics, plus borrowing from the RPG world and everything else. This feels like a real deal for rhythm fighting action style games, so absolutely stays on my wish list, and a thumb up from me. The next game also stays on my wish list, and it's called Remix, but I'm going to be purposefully vague on this because it's not in English. And the idea around this is, again, moving to the beat of the music, very like Curse of the Necrodancer. You bring up a party of 6 characters that all play different instruments or sing or something like that. And it's almost like a Brotato Vampire Survivors rhythm game where you can only trigger fire if you hit it on the beat. And it's all like area of attack around you. So you're wandering around the map trying to kill the different enemies to get to the boss to try and kill it within the time limit. As you clear each wave, you then get to spend the coins that you collect from the killing of the enemies to buy various either character upgrades or like just general stats on HP, damage, area of attack, all of that kind of stuff. From what I'm guessing, but I can't read any of the actual upgrades, but it still felt good and fun to play, and that's why it's staying on my wish list, because I was still having fun even if I didn't have a bloody clue what was going on. So that's Remix. Hopefully it gets an English translation when it comes up for release. Thumbs up from me. Back to more traditional-ish rhythm action games with Diets and Deities. Now, this is a traditional rhythm action game in terms of like lanes of things coming down towards you, but you need to dodge most of it and only collect the cooking elements so that you can then create dishes to satisfy the deities in the game. The game is split very much between rhythm action elements and then a piece of story with an overworld and your like restaurant and chatting to gods and then getting the next kind of piece of story so that you can then go back to the rhythm action element. But the game plays identically to a game that I reviewed back in 2021 called Beat Souls, which again is like trying to avoid all of the gates that hurt your HP and kill you and only collecting certain things to get to the end. This felt harder, and it went hard because in a couple of levels that it gives you in the demo, there was like a nice breezy, oh, isn't this so cute? And then like a boss demon comes along and I was like, ah! Really having to like properly spam buttons to move back and forth to collect things and get back out again. But it had real rhythm to it and the charts worked really well with the music. So whilst I didn't really care too much about the story side of stuff, the rhythm action elements here were top notch. So a thumbs up from me and it stays on my wish list. The next game on this list is called ASTERISM, and I'm really on the fence over it because I like the idea and concept, but I didn't really get too much enjoyment out of experiencing it, or not as much as what I'd hoped. It's an interactive musical album, and the idea behind this is you play as this astronaut crossing across the galaxy, and each planet that you go to will have its own song that will play out, and then you interact with the music video of visiting that album and experiencing the emotions and everything that's going on around it. So far, so very esoteric and up my own arse. Love that kind of stuff. You know I'm a bit pretentious at times, and this is definitely pretentious. The problem with this is that in order for these types of interactive music albums to work, the music actually has to be good. And I don't want to be too harsh here, but the music itself and the instrument playing is fine, but the vocals are really hit and miss. Some of the more ethereal stuff, where you can be atonal and you're not really sure what note they're aiming for, is fine because you kind of go, ooh, a bit spooky. But then when it hits rock albums and some of the lyrics are like mumbled through, it's flat, it's out of tune, it cuts across like really chonky, grizzly, like guitar chugs, and it's all a bit ramshackle but not in a good way. I came away from it going, oh, am I going to have to endure this music to get through it? And by the end of the demo I felt like I was going to have to. So it's on my wish list for now, but I think I will probably remove it. I like the concept and idea of it more than the actual execution, and it's purely down to the musical side of it rather than the interactive side of it, because I think actually graphically and idea-wise this game has got quite a lot to offer. High on Rhythm is the penultimate game on this list, and it is a rhythm action game crossed with a bullet hell avoidance game. So you pick a song and you have like this little inner circle and outer circle, and you need to hit your notes as the circles match up on each other. And what that then does is hurt and attack any enemies coming at you inside your circle of influence. So what you're doing is moving around completely free of any rhythm element to where you can get close to enemies that are going to try and attack you, and then keep pressing the buttons as you go. So it's like a rhythm action arena shooter. I really liked this. The music was quite cool as well because it was this mixture of lo-fi beats and like weird Asian folk rock. It was a vibe, but I enjoyed it. And the fact that it was really quite tricky to manoeuvre yourself around and be rhythmic at the same time meant you was kind of working two sides of your brain. So it took a little while for me to get used to it, but I was really enjoying the experience. The demo's got 5 songs on it. I recommend you dive in and play all 5 because each one kind of does something slightly different and ups the difficulty and ante. So yeah, high on rhythm, staying on my wish list, great little game. The final game on this review list is called AMP, A-M-P, and I'm going to describe this as the indie version of the game Res. This is a space shooter style game, but it's all around the rhythm and musical elements of what's going on around you. You fly as a spaceship through these low poly environments, heavily technoized and stylized and electronicized, I guess is the other word that I'd throw in the mix. None of them real, but I'll give it a go. And you have 2 different signal chains that you can then attack various enemies at. And it will be things like you can hold and lock on to up to 8 enemies and then let go and fire on the 8th beat. And that will do more damage than you just kind of hitting things randomly and scoring more points. It's identical to Res, but in a good way, because it still felt fluid, it felt fast. I really like the vibrancy of the graphical style. And when the boss came along, I was like, this feels very Res inspired too, but in a good way. And so whilst it probably flies a little too close to its influencer son, I really enjoyed my time with AMP. It's a great little demo that's just a concise single level that shows you everything you need to know about the game. Straight on the wish list. Very happy bunny. So they're my 8 rhythm games that I've played through Steam Next Fest February 2023. Let me know below if there's anything that particularly stands out for you. And largely, I'd say 6 of the 8 are ones that I'll probably pick up, so you'll see a review of them when they come out later on. Take care.
Higher Plane Games is part of the Higher Plane Network, a completely independent media outlet supported by people like you. The goal is to create the best possible content that cultivates a richer indie scene for games as well as music and entertainment. To find out more and to get involved, visit patreon.com/Higher Plane Network. Your support makes all the difference, and in return you'll gain access to bonus content and downloads. Thank you for watching.